Physics 1, today you are going to learn how to use a multimeter, which is this tool here. You've probably seen some in your classrooms. They come in a variety of different styles, but this is a tool that's extremely useful when analyzing characteristics of circuits or anything electrical. And it'll be extremely commonly used in Whittaker, any sort of engineering, anything like that. Now, these are pretty simple versions. They can get increasingly more complex, but they're all going to follow the same sort of structure. Now, notice here we basically have the main box, and attached to it I have two leads, which basically they look a lot like the alligator clip wires, but they're not clips on the end, there's just these two little pointers. Now, I'm actually going to zoom in here in a second now that we've seen those leads, just so we can see what I'm doing a little better now. Okay, so the two things we want to be able to do when we're doing any sort of circuit measurements, like for instance, I have a light bulb lit right here, and let's say I want to measure the current of this light bulb or the voltage of this light bulb. That's really where this is going to be most useful, is in those two different realms. So before we move on, really there are three steps we need to remember when getting ready to do this and going from one type of measurement to another. Now first, this is actually not one of the steps. You just need to turn it on. However, notice there is an on-off switch. These will lose battery over time and die, and then it's very much a pain to replace them. So whenever you are done taking measurements, please turn it back off. They do not shut off automatically, so doing that would be very helpful. Okay, so the three steps now, after we turn it on. One, we have to make sure the dial here is in the right position for what we're trying to measure. We'll talk more about that in a second. Two, we have to make sure our leads are connected appropriately, because notice there are actually three spots for the leads to go. We only have two leads, so we need to figure that out. And lastly, the third part is we need to know how to hook this up with the light bulb to get accurate measurements. So let's go ahead and start with voltage. So let's say you want to measure the voltage across this light bulb. Now, the first thing we need to do is we need to look at all the various pieces here and figure out where our dial needs to go. Now, in this class, you are universally going to probably be using the DCV, that stands for DC voltage, one's over here, so I'm going to turn it over there. And additionally, you're almost always going to be pretty well served with the 20 volt option. That's because we're using 5 volt power supply, so a 20 volt is pretty much going to always do what you need to do. You can turn that down to millivolts, you can turn it up to 200 volts. There are different options. It basically just makes it more or less precise, but 20 volts should usually be pretty good. So one, turn the dial to 20 volts. Two, let's look at our leads here. So with this black lead is connected to one that says COM, C-O-M. That stands for common, or essentially it is the ground. This one is going to always stay here, so we don't need to worry about moving it. However, this red lead has two options. Right here, this top one says 5A DC. That stands for 5 amps DC. And this middle one stands for volts. That's the ohm symbol in milliamps. So we want volts, so we're going to plug this into the volts basically input on the multimeter. The reason why this is important is it's basically telling the circuitry of the multimeter what you're going to do, so it can make sure it's doing it appropriately. Okay, lastly, for voltages, we have to know how to do our leads. Now, this is actually pretty straightforward because we want to do the voltage across the light bulb. You want to compare basically how many joules per coulomb are over here versus how many joules per coulomb are over here. So I can literally just touch these across, and I'm getting a voltage of 2.41 volts. Now I'm having to apply a little bit of pressure here to make sure that's good. And if you were really worried that you were not getting enough pressure, you could take a set of alligator clips and clip this to either side. Now notice I got a positive 2.41 here. If I flip the leads, I get a negative 2.41. That's just basically telling me I have my leads backwards. So if you get a negative sign on the voltage, you can just ignore it. Basically just say you just want the magnitudes of these voltages. Okay, so one more time, let me kind of mess this up real fast. Let's just unplug that for a second. So to do a voltage, step one, we're going to turn this to DCV, probably 20 volts. You can adjust it from there if you need to. Step 2, I'm going to plug this into where it says volts. And step 3, we're going to take our leads and go literally just across what we want to measure. And if we get a negative, we can either just get rid of the negative sign, or I can literally just flip my leads. Okay, so that's voltages. So now let's talk about currents. If I want to measure the current or the amount of charge flowing through this light bulb per second, okay, so basically let's go back to the 3 steps again. 1, I need to change my dial. So I'm going to turn this not from DC voltage, but to DCA, or DC, think of that as amps. And specifically, I'm going to, I'm going to skip the DCA, and I'm instead going to go to this 5 amp option. Now the reason for this is, so this 5 amp option, you'll see it is connected right here to this basically input here. Essentially, this is all this input is essentially used for. It is 5 amps DC. It measures up to 5 amps. And it's not the most precise, but it should basically work for everything we need in class. These other ones where it says DCA, those are all going to be microamps and milliamps. And the issue with these is a lot of times we'll pull currents that are too big and it'll actually blow a fuse in this multimeter. And for a lot of these, that fuse might already be blown. So we can instead just focus on this one. It's going to take a lot of current, more current than you should ever be using in this class, to blow this fuse. So it's going to be much more reliable. So one more time. Step 1, I'm going to turn this to 5 amps, the one that's circled in red. 2, since I want 5 amps DC, I need to disconnect my lead, and instead put in the 5 amps option. Okay, now this is the last part. If I go just directly across this, that went out. And that's because basically what I've done is shorted the bulb here. To measure currents, instead what we need to do is think about, okay, well, we want to measure how much charge is going into this bulb. So instead, what I need to do is actually disconnect it. I'm going to reconnect one of my leads here, and then connect this here so it becomes a part of the pathway that the current is going through. And we get a amperage of 0.25 amps. Once again, if we did this backwards, so if I could get this to work, there we go. If we do this backwards, we get negative 0.25 amps. Once again, we can just ignore that negative sign. So one more time, just to remind ourselves what to do. Let me once again mess it up. If you want to measure current, I turn this to the 5 amps DC. I plug this in to the 5 amps DC option. But rather than just going across, I need to literally disconnect and make the ammeter part of this loop. Okay, so to summarize, the 3 things we need to do with these, actually 4, a lot of things. 1, turn it on, please turn it off when you're done. That's really important. Number 2, if you're going to measure a voltage, we turn it to, start with 20 volts, move this to the volt option, and we go just directly across whatever we're trying to measure. If we're measuring a current, we turn the dial to 5 amps, we move this to the 5 amp option, and rather than going across, we have to clip it in and make it part of a singular loop with the bulb. Okay, that should give you a start. We're going to practice using this a lot during class, so just feel free to ask your teacher if you've got questions.